We are very happy to welcome to all the participants joining today for the CeRIMed Talk, which is a very complex, but I hope you'll hear the lot of details how this really connects to our daily life is on integrative and effective treatment of complex disease by yoga. The terms itself gives you a lot of impression that these are very common terms, but how it all connected. And my job is today just to give a brief why we are doing this talk on CeRIMed platform. Actually, CeRIMed is a platform which we started almost 2 years back, where we talk about integrating um, modern medicine with ancient wisdom of India. So that is Center for Research in Integrated Medicine. That's what the CeRIMed stands for. And in that journey of giving, we found a lot of interesting area where people are trying to combining not only modern medicine, but make it more effective by combining those our ancient knowledge and effect of that. Initially, it was on a very mm, belief system, but we are gradually seeing there are a lot of science behind it and how it gets connected. You'll see a lot of that today during this talk by our very eminent speaker, Dr. Rima Dada. She's a professor and a faculty and also in charge of this molecular reproductive and genetic facility in the Department of Anatomy, the AIIMS, New Delhi. Actually, she's created that facility. That's why I think you'll hear the in-depth knowledge, how it really connects to our ancient wisdom and the science behind it. The topic is, as I said, integrative and effective treatment of complex disease by yoga. And we are doing on a platform which is actually, we run a regular program on IWSP, that is Integrated Wellness Science and Practice. Here also we see is again the integrations of our daily that understanding how the disease happens, how to get rid of the disease by integrations of the science, and how do you practice it. It will be much easier for you to understand if you see a brief video on IWSP. I request a small video. Please watch for 2-3 minutes. Then we will tell a little more background of this our journey. Can play the video, please. This is about IWSP, Integrated Wellness Science and Practice. So that's a very brief introduction of IWSP. And actually, we have upgraded from a regular batch to now we have an e-learning module also, because a lot of people throughout the world, when they join, we find other than US and India, there is a problem of joining. So we have e-learning module also available. If you go to our website, myiwsp.com, you'll see all the options available and you can join to those e-learning module as well. Now, all this thing possible because we have an eminent speaker and a facilitator, Swamiji with us, Dr. Dayadipananda, and also Dr. Sushil Sharma, who are actually the brain and the things are running because of them. Fortunately, they are also with us today. You will maybe at some point of time, you can get to know and interact with them at some point of time. All this thing we are able to handle it by this background supporting team of Reach Healthcare. Reach Healthcare is a healthcare facilities running from Bangalore, but it offers services throughout India. And I'll request again to play small video, just watch that, and you can avail the service from the Reach Healthcare for any of your medical requirement. So that's a brief intro on Reach Healthcare. And today, really, what you're looking for, I'd like to thank Dr. Rima Dada for joining us to cover this complex subject of integrative and effective treatment of complex disease by yoga. And so, to briefly introduce her, I'll request Swamiji to tell few of her background, and obviously he's our facilitator for IWSP, where we learn a lot about meditations. So I request Swamiji to tell briefly about this. Swamiji, please.
Namaskar, my warm love and namaskars to all our esteemed participants who have joined us this evening for a wonderful topic to learn. And as already explained in brief by Dr. Subratoji, as long as we live, we do learn, said Sri Ramakrishna. जो राम थे कृष्ण थे राम कृष्ण होके इस कलयुग में आए, बोले जब तक हम जीते रहते हैं कुछ ना कुछ नया सीखते रहते हैं. That's what is all about the medical science. Every day we learn a lot. When we have an open mind, we do succeed in learning new things and doing research, publishing the results with the evidence-based medicine, evidence-based system rather. We are able to approach people at large so that they also undergo that and get the benefit. This is what I learned all about the modern science. When it comes to ancient wisdom, Ekam sat vipraha bodha vadanti. The truth is one, though the men and women of wisdom put it in different words, which means the eternal truth, which is nowadays called as consciousness. There are a lot of studies going on consciousness, pure consciousness, the Atman, the Brahman, the eternal truth, which is also described as Satyam Shivam Sundaram, Sat Chit Ananda. There is one thing which always exists. It is unchangeable. That's why it alone is true. And the nature of that is bliss, joy, happiness. So this being the substratum of this universe, which many of the medical doctors have now started speaking. So the joy, the happiness, everything comes from within. Rather, everything in this universe exists because of some eternal entity And that's our real nature. So that's where I said this ancient wisdom, though it was experienced, not just seen or heard, experienced by everybody through sadhana, through practice. After experiencing, they expressed. This is the nature of Atman, Brahman, the eternal truth, pure consciousness. Sat Chit Ananda, Satyam Shivam Sundaram. And some people just said, ha, hu, without any words, just they express the joy, bliss, happiness. So, though the ancient wisdom, as expressed by different sages or saints or rishis or men and women of wisdom, though it is expressed in different words, the truth is one. So this is what when it comes to ancient wisdom. But when it comes to external science, the physical science, the material science, especially the medical science, things keep on changing. Lot of things develop based on the evidence base. We do research and come to some inference and come and tell to people, you do this, you get the health benefit. That's what I understand by the modern medicine or the evidence-based medicine system. So with this brief introduction about the ancient wisdom and the modern science, let me now introduce Dr. Rima Dada, whom I know personally for the last 2 years. In the beginning, we came to know each other through international yoga conferences. Then we were on the same platform. Then we came to know each other, and Dr. Rima Dada very much interested to learn all about integrated wellness science and practice. And regularly we keep discussing. And she's also a very keen student to learn all about integrated wellness. And when it comes to work, she has done an excellent work in the field of academics when it comes. And she is a professor, as already introduced by Dr. Subrataji, at AIIMS Rishikesh, All India Institute of Medical Science, New Delhi. And she has established a department, molecular genetics, which is a rare subject to study and do research. And basically, she's a researcher. After doing research, she publishes papers and she goes on international and national platforms so that she conveys the message to the people. So with her research mind, what she understands about yoga, how modern science and the yogic practices can help us to attain health and wellness. That is the main theme. And I know her for her lucid presentation, though it's a very complex subject. With her experience, she makes the subject very simple. And now I request Dr. Rima Dada to present her talk, and we learn a lot, I believe. And after we listen to her, we can also come up with question answers. And also, I'm proud of all my esteemed participants. Many of them are already people who have attended IWSP or learning IWSP, and few of them are from Reach Healthcare. I welcome all my participants for this wonderful program and talk by Dr. Rima Dada. Over to Dr. Rima.
Thank you, Swamiji. I would be talking today on the impact of yoga in complex diseases. And I think this topic is really important today because it touches upon all of us, because there is a globalization in these chronic complex lifestyle diseases. And majority of these diseases have shown a steep increase because of factors which are majorly preventable, modifiable, but are due to those factors which are due to our unhealthy lifestyle and social habits. It's so important to understand that majority of the diseases that we suffer from today, they have shifted from infectious diseases, which happened about a century back, to diseases which are totally in our control. Because we now know that beyond our genes, it's our environment and lifestyle, which actually impacts our health through the epigenome. I'll just explain each of these things in a little more detail. But it's very, very important to understand that why has there been such a globalization and a steep increase in the incidence of complex lifestyle diseases? And why are they known as lifestyle diseases? So what are complex diseases? These are diseases in which there is an interplay between the genes and our environment. So there are a number of genes, each of which has a small additional additive effect. And then there is a role of the environment. And the environment is our social habits, what we eat, what we think, what we consume, our emotions, our thoughts, all impact our genome. We were brought up with this paradigm that our genes determine our phenotype. So we inherit a set of genes from our mother, our father. We cannot change those genes. And it is known that when there is a variation in the sequence of the genes, a change in the nucleotide sequence which makes up the DNA, that results in health or disease states. Some could be beneficial, some are detrimental. But now we know that we can change the output or the expression of the genes. We can switch on certain genes, we can switch off certain genes by our habits. By whatever we do on a regular basis, we can actually switch on gene programs, we can switch off gene programs. So that's very, very important to understand that we actually can modulate our epigenome. Epigenome is what is operating above the genetic landscape. So initially it was believed that your DNA is your blueprint of life, your genes determine your biology, your health and disease states. But now we know that we can change the output of our genes without any change in the nucleotide sequence. And that occurs through our behaviors, our emotions, our thoughts, our lifestyle, what we consume. And today you will see that when you follow, these all modulate what we call the epigenome. And what is an epigenome? It is nothing but the change in the genetic landscape by causing certain chemical modifications of certain proteins with the DNA or certain bases which are associated with the DNA. So basically what is important to understand is that our lifestyle, our social habits are modulating the output and the expression of our genes. Healthy, good habits, for example, practicing yoga, having a whole plant-based diet, unrefined, unprocessed diet, sleeping adequately, leading a healthy lifestyle, switch on gene programs which are beneficial for us. For example, they'll switch on gene programs which are helping to maintain the DNA integrity. They'll switch on gene programs which are helping to maintain immune homeostasis. They will switch on gene programs which will decrease inflammation. Whereas unhealthy habits like chronic stress, having fast food, junk food, having a lot of non-veg food, will switch on gene programs which will cause inflammation, oxidative stress, a condition in which you find that the free radical increase. And what are free radicals? These are unstable molecules which will damage all the molecules in their vicinity. It could be DNA, that could be RNA, that could be carbohydrates, proteins, anything which are in their vicinity. So unhealthy habits will switch on gene programs which cause inflammation, oxidative stress. They will cause enhanced dysregulation in the immune response, and chronic unhealthy lifestyle, chronic stress, chronically adopting habits which are not healthy, for example, smoking, constantly thinking negative thoughts. They are going to release certain chemicals which cause chronic inflammation, and that actually sets the stage for these complex lifestyle diseases like autoimmune diseases and cancer. And I would like to highlight before I begin the talk that it could be any complex disease. It could be diabetes, it could be hypertension, it could be unexplained male factor infertility, polycystic ovaries, dementia, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. It could be cancer, autoimmune disease, depression. All of them share some common underlying mechanisms. And there is no modality in modern medicine which can target all of those underlying mechanisms. it's also important to understand that modern medicine, though is very important, it definitely helps in managing surgical conditions, acute emergencies, but it basically deals with tackling symptoms and they deal with managing a disease. Whereas yoga helps you to actually achieve optimal health and wellness. And yoga, by practicing yoga, you will see that it is able to tackle all the underlying mechanisms. And so I will show you that be it any complex disease, I have chosen 4 examples on which we are working. Now we have started working on others as well, that how yoga can tackle all the underlying mechanisms. And thus it actually switches on gene programs. It modulates the epigenome and is like a poly pill, which switches on gene programs which are beneficial for us. So it's important to know that it is our unhealthy lifestyle which has actually led to a huge steep increase in the incidence of these complex diseases. And therefore, we find that, I'm just sharing my slides. Can you see the slides?
Yeah, but it's right now not in a presentation mode. Can you make it full screen?
Yeah, can you see it now?
Yes, that's right.
So what I was talking about was that I told you that what are complex diseases, that the genes don't determine our destiny, that our health and biology and disease and health states are determined by our lifestyle, our thoughts. And how do they determine our health and disease states? By acting on the epigenome, which is highly dynamic, which is changing minute to minute by our thoughts and all. And anything that we do on a regular basis, which becomes a habit, modulates the epigenome. And what's important is that this epigenome is transmitted through our germ cells. So that's a very, very important information that we should be aware of. And it's very empowering that we should be aware that any of our habits are going to modulate the epigenome. And the epigenome influences our health. And we too can influence the epigenome by our choices, be it healthy or be it choices which are not healthy for our epigenome. And yoga, and I would talk to you how yoga is a mind-body medicine. It's actually an art of living, which is both on and off the mat, and how the 8 limbs of yoga, if we practice, are not only beneficial for our health, but also that of the planet Earth. And I'll just tell you why. And yoga is like a poly pill which modulates the internal pharmacy. It switches on gene programs which are beneficial for us. And you will see that it acts, not only it is going to enhance our physical resilience, physical self-efficacy, helps, which we all think yoga is synonymous with asanas. No, but yoga asanas are a small component, but breathing, regulated breathing practices and meditation, they act on every cell of the body. They enhance emotional resilience. They help us to become more aware, live mindfully, live with a purpose, and help us to realize the deeper reason and the purpose of our lives. And it positively impacts both the mitochondrial as well as the nuclear genome. So yoga is acting at the cellular level and at the molecular level, and I'll show you the results of those studies. So as I told you, what do you think is the reason that these complex diseases are occurring so frequently? Why are they impacting so many of us, and definitely many of our family members? Why is it that we hear reports that hypertension is occurring in 3 out of 10 school children? We find strokes occurring in young adults at the age of 20 to 25 years. The reason is that we have become largely from a hunter-gatherer society to a society which is largely sedentary. And it has been seen that about 30 to 40% of the population is largely sedentary. In addition to that, we find that there is a large population which is being driven to have fast food, junk food, food which is rich in calories, it's calorie dense, nutrient poor food. This is a food which is highly refined, highly processed, and we are driven to have that every day because we have these advertisements which show the more we eat outside, the more concessions we get. And that is the reason it's been seen because of our unhealthy lifestyle, sedentary lifestyle, because of the fast food that we are having. We see that though the life expectancy from 1950, it increased to, it was just around 50 years, it increased in about 2010 to about 75 to 80 years. But now we see that the trend is now reversing. It's again going down. And this is because of the epidemic of complex lifestyle diseases. And why is this actually occurring? This is actually occurring because we see that not only are we leading unhealthy lifestyle, a lot of stress, but in addition to that, we find that we are facing also the global epidemic of obesity and overweight. We find that this is data from US, from the Center for Disease Control, which shows that 1 in 3 children and teens aged between 2 to 19 are considered overweight or obese. 2 out of 3 do not get adequate physical activity. 96% of elementary schools have no physical education classes, and we are spending at least about 7 to 12 hours sitting on our computers or TV. And the reason why we are having this unhealthy food, you can see here that the cost of water is more than the cost of these soft drinks, sugary drinks, which are so rich in hollow calories. You can see that salads cost more than a burger. And that is why this has led to a population which is chronically hungry, which is having calorie dense and unhealthy food, which is not only disturbing the microbiome which exists in our gut, in our GIT, which is existing in our trachea, which is actually, we exist as a powerful ecosystem. And whatever we eat is also nurturing the gut microbiome. And we see a disturbance in the gut microbiome is actually responsible for a large number of autoimmune diseases and depression. And it's been seen that children who consume such fast food, next day, in their classes, they perform badly in their studies. And that is also one of the reasons where there has been a steep increase in the incidence of attention deficit hyperactivity disorders. In addition to that, we also constantly hear that there has been an increase in the incidence of diseases. And, we believe that it's because of pollution. But it's important to understand that suppose there are diseases, there may be 1,000 individuals with a particular disease, but it would be just 1 or 2 individuals who have the mutations which lead to the disease. The rest of them are having the disease because of their lifestyle. And that's because of the unhealthy lifestyle. And in complex lifestyle diseases, each gene has a small additive effect, but these genes are not causal. They are just increasing your risk or susceptibility to develop the disease, but they do not cause the disease. So if you lead a healthy lifestyle, you will not develop the particular disease. So I would just like to talk a bit about the gut microbiome, which has now seen that it's one of the major, as I told you, we are existing as a powerful ecosystem where we have trillions of microorganisms in our gut, in our respiratory passage, in the tear microbiome. And this is very, very important because it secretes various neuropeptides and various factors. Actually, 99% of the serotonin is secreted by in the gut, which is required for our mental health. And not only that, it is seen for immune regulation, the gut microbiome plays a very important role. And there are certain factors, even in the mother's milk, which are not digested by the person, but these are actually for the gut, for nurturing the gut microbiome. And we see that inadequate sleep, artificial sweeteners, non-veg food, highly processed refined foods actually damage the gut microbiome. And a whole plant-based food actually nurtures the gut microbiome. And damage to the gut microbiome is actually responsible, again, for obesity, inflammatory bowel disease, depression, autism, and multiple sclerosis. I would also like to give you a small example, which I have taken because everybody dreads this disease, cancer. Again, it's important to know that cancer is a complex disease. It's a lifestyle disease. Though we blame it on our genes, it's important to see here that the genes are playing a very small role. And in that also, there are 2 to 3% mutations which are highly penetrant. Means if you have the mutation, you will develop the cancer. In rest of the cases, you find the genes are just increasing the risk or susceptibility, those mutations. They are not causal, but it's our diet. You can see the diet is playing such a major role. Obesity is playing such a major role. Tobacco, alcohol consumption, infections, they play a very, very major role in causation of cancer. So you just cannot blame your genes, but you have to correct your lifestyle. And now WHO has already shown that red meat kills and processed meat kills faster. So When the WHO declared that red meat kills, people shifted to white meat, but now studies have shown beyond doubt that both red and white meat are equally bad. And I am now quoting from the Eat Lancet Commission report, which states that unhealthy and unsustainably produced food poses a global risk to people and the planet. More than 820 million people have insufficient food, and many more consume an unhealthy diet that contributes to premature death and morbidity. And in addition to that, there is that moreover, global food production is the largest pressure caused by humans on Earth, threatening local ecosystems and the stability of the Earth system. Unhealthy diet poses a greater risk to morbidity and mortality than does unsafe sex, alcohol, drug, and tobacco use combined. So we just need to stop and think for a minute that there is such a huge contrast. There is at one end, there are people who are having such a fast food. They are, we are throwing food, we are wasting food. And on the other side, there are people who sleep without having food. And then we are also facing this huge problem of fresh water. There is hardly any water for drinking. We are facing, there's so many people leading such stressful lives. You know that there is a refugee crisis, so much war, and people are traveling hundreds of kilometers to just get fresh water. You can see these children carrying these water for drinking, which is the fresh water. And I would just like to point out, as I told you, that what is good for us is also good for the planet Earth. You can see here that when you have non-veg food, it is not only detrimental for your health, it's really detrimental for the planet also. You can see that 1,850 gallons of water are consumed for 1 pound of meat when you raise these animals. And the carbon footprint by these animals is far higher than when you actually grow fruits and vegetables. It's important to understand that when these animals chew on these grasses, that undergoes enteric fermentation, and it releases carbon, this methane, as well as nitric oxide, and that is actually much more harmful to the ozone layer as compared to the combustion from automobiles. And it has been seen that the amount of damage they cause to the ozone layer is much more than all the modalities of transportation combined. So not only when we are consuming these animals, not only are they bad for health, but they are being reared for our food. And you can see this is such an unhealthy practice for the planet Earth. We are facing the huge water crisis, but fresh water is being used for this. Not only, we are also using much more of the land for growing produce for these animals. And in addition to that, they are also causing releasing various gases which are depleting the ozone layer, which are also responsible for global warming. So food systems have the potential to nurture human health and support environmental sustainability. However, they are currently threatening both. And this is from the Eat Lancet Commission, the report from 2019. So it's important to understand that our unhealthy lifestyle is actually pushing millions and millions of people below the poverty line. And the reason is that our industry is actually sustaining on managing disease rather than managing health. And we try to suppress the symptoms rather than remove the cause of the disease. So we actually need to focus on health rather than focus on the disease. So be it any complex disease, be it hypertension, be it diabetes, be it depression, be it cancer, or any autoimmune disease like multiple sclerosis or rheumatoid arthritis, be it primary open-angle glaucoma, be it unexplained male factor infertility, polycystic ovarian disease, all of them have some shared underlying mechanisms. Now, what are these? These are chronic inflammation. There is stress, anxiety, depression. There is dysregulated, the output expression of the genes becomes dysregulated. There are a lot of free radicals which are produced. There are shorter telomeres. Telomeres are like our biological clock. They determine the rate at which we age. And when they shorten faster, we age faster. And one of the key triggers for them shortening faster is inflammation and oxidative stress, as well as stress, anxiety, and depression. So they result in early onset of these complex lifestyle diseases. And we also find that there is a dysregulated immune system and persistent activation of the sympathetic nervous system, which results in these complex lifestyle diseases. So it could be any disease, they have a common underlying mechanism. So how do we combat them? So this is this paper which came out in Archives of Internal Medicine, which states that healthy living is the best revenge. And so I thought I would talk on our studies on yoga. So yoga is a mind-body medicine. It is a profound science and technology, which is India's biggest gift to the world. And it's a science which was propounded by Adi Yogi about 15,000 years ago. And all the teachings were compiled by Maharishi Patanjali. I would like to emphasize here that when we talk of yoga, people consider it just synonymous with the exercise, like as if it's equivalent to exercise, but asanas just form a small component. The main aim of the asanas is to actually align bring the body in a certain geometry so that your trunk is upright, your spine maintains its curvature so that you can breathe more effectively. And when you're able to breathe more effectively, you do get into a meditative state, which is nothing but a state of heightened awareness in a non-judgmental way. It's important to understand that whenever we talk of yoga, it's not just what we do on the mat, it's an entire lifestyle. So the 8 limbs of yoga, the yama, niyamas, which is the code of personal ethics, how we behave with others, if we follow all these, what we consume through our eyes, through our ears, the food that we eat, as well as these asanas, pranayams, which I'm going to be talking about, if we follow these yama, niyamas, pratyahara, we can actually, reduce the global inequality, the grave, this imbalance. You are seeing one end there are people who are starving, other end there are people who are throwing food. We would care for the people who are not having food. There would be a more equality, and we could remove the injustice, and we would stop the violence towards others as well as towards the animals. And so first thing that I would now like to talk about is male reproductive health. And why this is very, very important is this is a topic for which all women are blamed, be it infertility, be it recurrent spontaneous abortions, be it congenital malformations, be it any health problem the child has after birth, you always blame the women. But it's very, very important to understand that in approximately half the cases, the problem of male infertility, the problem of frequent spontaneous abortion, congenital malformations, the male partner plays an equal role. And of all the cells in the body, the male germ cell is the only cell which is not able to repair its damage. The reason is that when it's developing, it sheds majority of its repair, the antioxidant defense mechanism to become very compact. And in addition to that, it also has a very compact genome, because of which you find that its repair machinery is largely silent. So if any other cell in the body suffers oxidative damage due to smoking, alcohol consumption, due to fast food, due to exposure to pollutants, air, waterborne pollutants, it is able to, combat that damage because they have antioxidant defense mechanism. The sperm is the only cell which cannot defend itself. So it's important to understand that the damage the sperm that occurs to the sperm goes unchecked. And when there is damage to the nucleus of the sperm, the DNA of the sperm, that DNA damage is not repaired by the sperm. It just starts the repair, but then it's dependent on the oocyte. So you can see here that again, the lifestyle factors are the one which are actually causing damage to the sperm. And now there's an increasing population of men who have normal parameters. So as per the guidelines, WHO guidelines, we would call them actually fertile men, but because they have normal count, they have normal motility, they have normal morphology, but yet they are infertile. And these are the group of men who go in for assisted conception, that is test tube babies. And you will see many hospitals mushrooming with these test tube baby centers. But it's important to understand that more you go in for this assisted conception, due to when you have sperm with DNA damage, which is due to oxidative stress, because the sperm does not clear its oxidative damage, because the DNA that is damaging the DNA, the more you will need this technique in the next generation. And when there is DNA damage, because sperm DNA damage is the single largest cause of defective sperm function and a single major reason for couples going in for assisted conception, it's important to know that when you transmit these sperm to the next generation, you are actually increasing the risk of huge number of diseases in the next generation. So it's important to understand that though we blame the women, because that is led to the concept of developmental origin of health and disease, that a mother's stress, mother's unhealthy lifestyle, maternal upbringing early in early years of her life, if she had depression or stress, that impacts the fetal growth. Yes, definitely it does. But it's important to know that in the oocyte, there's a robust repair mechanism which is active. She has the oocytes have a good antioxidant defense mechanism, but in the sperm, the defense mechanism, the DNA repair mechanism is largely silent. The antioxidant defense mechanism is minimal because they have shed majority of them, and therefore damage to the sperm is actually responsible for a large number of genetic and epigenetic diseases in the next generation. So men need to be aware, and this has led to the concept of paternal origin of health and disease. You can see that, people are delaying the age of marriage, delaying the age of conception, that is the cause for autism. We have also seen an increase in the number of childhood cancers when there's advanced paternal age. It's linked to schizophrenia. Fast food intake by the father leaves epigenetic mark on the sperm, which is also again responsible for neurodevelopmental and various obesity even in their children. So our study, we summarized by showing that unhealthy lifestyle factors, majority of which are modifiable: psychological stress, smoking, alcohol consumption, advanced age of conception, actually leads to oxidative stress. That oxidative stress damages both your nuclear and mitochondrial DNA. And when such nuclear and mitochondrial DNA are damaged, this actually results in, you find shorter telomeres. So there is accelerating aging of these germ cells. There is accumulation of this particular base, which is really important. And I'll mention it here because this is a base which is very, very important, because this is the one which induces both mutations as well as epimutations in the germ cells, and is responsible not only for bad, cancers, certain cancers in the person himself, gonadal and extragonadal, but is also responsible for genetic and epigenetic diseases in the next generation. So that leads to congenital malformations, childhood cancers, complex neuropsychiatric disorders like autism, childhood depression, schizophrenia in children, dominant genetic diseases, and recurrent spontaneous abortion, which has led to the concept of paternal origin of health and disease. So men really need to be aware that right from the time when they themselves are conceived, whatever habits they follow, they are leaving a mark on the germ cell. So they need to lead healthy lifestyle. It's just not that before conception, before you plan to have a child, you lead healthy lifestyle and you will be able to correct all the damage. Definitely, there would be some improvement, but your lifestyle, your choices, right from the time you yourself are conceived, leaves a mark on your germ cells, which impacts your offspring's health. So here we also studied this damage, and we find that in infertile cases, you find there is higher amount of fragmented DNA, and there are two techniques by which we do this assay in the patients which are referred to us. And you can see here that here each dot represents the sperm, and the number of sperm towards the x-axis are the ones with the damaged DNA. And I'll show you this again, how yoga is able to impact that. So you can see in infertile men as compared to the control, there are large number of sperm with damaged DNA. And here I just wanted to show you that I told you that this is the base which causes mutations and epimutations in the next generation. So we studied the base, and we found that in cases with sporadic cancers, where the cancers are not running in the family, we find that the father's quality of sperm DNA is, they have got a high level of oxidative DNA damage, poor quality DNA, which is responsible for both de novo germline mutations and epimutations, which is causing childhood cancers like retinoblastoma. And why does this happen? We also quantified the level of this base in the children, because the sperm is not able to correct the damage. And when the damage is extensive, this damage cannot be cleared by the oocyte if the damage is too much. And when you delay the age of marriage, the oocyte's repair mechanism is also suboptimal. Therefore, this damage passes to the after fertilization to every cell in the body, which is responsible for post-zygotic mutations and epimutations. So you can see here, this is childhood cancer, retinoblastoma. We worked on 2 cancers, retinoblastoma. And what I just wanted to show you, because of the father's unhealthy lifestyle or advanced age, they had high levels of free radicals. This is reactive oxygen species, and the DNA fragmentation index was much higher as compared to the control levels. And you can also see these are pedigree charts. What it just shows that this is the father and the mother. These are the affected offsprings. Okay, so what I wanted to show you was these are the number of the offsprings, you know, this is the siblings, brothers and sisters, they are not affected. But it's usually the last one who's been affected, means when the paternal age was very high. So it was usually the offspring which was born after when the father's age was higher, towards the higher side, that they had these cancers, the childhood cancers. So when you delay the age of having a child, this also increases the incidence of these disorders. And you can see that there are reports, which this is not our study, but that was our study, where they have shown a significant increase in the, abortions, spontaneous abortions when the age increases, and also the incidence of autism increases beyond when you have children at a much later age. And this is a study which we have started on autism, where we also found that these men we studied the sperm quality of fathers and children who had children who were autistic, and we found that these were men who had advanced age, which adversely impacts the epigenome. They had high levels of oxidative damage to the sperm. We found that there was hypermethylation. When genes get hypermethylated, there is silencing of various genes which were involved in developmental processes, in formation of synapses. These are the ones by which the neurons coordinate functioning with each other. There was the genes which are involved in sensory motor conduction, inflammatory pathways, and innate immunity and cancer. Some of the genes were hypermethylated, which increase the risk for autism in these offsprings. So now I'll talk of the impact of yoga on the sperm genome and epigenome. So when we did these studies, we found that there was increase in the motility. And why did this happen, the sperm motility? Because there was a significant decline in the free radical levels. Along with that, why did this happen? When we did these studies, there were 2 groups, one which practiced yoga and meditation, and the other group which did not do meditation and yoga. So we find in the group that did yoga, we found that there was an increase in the total antioxidant capacity that was significant, whereas there was no significant change in the group that did not practice yoga. Now, why is this happening? This is happening because we find that there is increase in the expression of genes, which is coding for antioxidants like catalase, superoxide dismutase, glutathione. So this is very, very important. And again, we also find that telomerase activity shows an increased post-practice of yoga. This is very important because telomerase is the one which is actually helping to heal the ends of the chromosomes. So they help to add the telomeres, with cell divisions, the telomeres become shorter and they serve as a biological clock. And we also find that oxidative stress, psychological stress, actually, which results again in oxidative stress, results in accelerated shortening of the telomere. So we age faster. But we can reverse that if we practice yoga because it is increasing the telomerase activity. In addition to that, I talked about this base, which is inducing mutations and epimutations, and which shows a significant decline post-practice of yoga. And this is really important because we've done studies which were randomized placebo-controlled trials, which have shown that majority of the antioxidants do not enter the nucleus. They may improve the sperm membrane characteristics, so the sperm has better motility and fertilizing power. But because the sperm DNA is just like a crystalline toroid, highly compact, there's very few antioxidants at therapeutic levels are able to enter the nucleus and cause significant improvement in the DNA quality. But you can see that there is a significant decline in the oxidative DNA damage. In addition to that, this was the first study to also show that yoga not only improves the genomic integrity, not only decreases the oxidative stress, decreases the damage to the sperm, but it also impacts the epigenome. Epigenome is the one which is regulating which genes are turned on and which genes are turned off. And we know now that at the time of fertilization, the sperm not only transmits DNA, but it also transmits number of RNA, which are also required for early embryonic events. And we find that oxidative stress, unhealthy lifestyle, psychological stress causes their levels to become altered. And when they are altered, it impacts embryogenesis and it can result in congenital malformations, early pregnancy losses, or genetic and epigenetic diseases. But we find that with practice of yoga, you can see that the levels start getting near the control levels post practice of yoga. In addition to that, we also showed for the first time that yoga actually increases the levels of these sirtuins, which are the longevity genes. And earlier they had shown that 100 glasses of red wine, which increases resveratrol, increases sirtuin levels. But now without intake of red wine, you can increase your levels of these sirtuins. And here I just wanted you to focus on this slide where you can see that clearly that you can see here, just like this, that you can see here that when these people practice yoga, though oxidative stress declined within 10 days and there was significant decline within 21 days, it takes about 6 months to show significant improvement in the DNA quality. And you can see here that the number of sperm towards the x-axis actually goes down because these are the ones with the damaged DNA. So post practice of yoga, the sperm with the damaged DNA actually declines. So it's very, very important to understand that yoga is the only modality which is acting both on your nuclear DNA. I'll show you how it acts on the mitochondrial DNA. It is also acting on the sperm epigenome. And this not only impacts the person's health, but also the impact on the next generation. And it impacts the health trajectory of the offspring and reduces the burden of genetic and epigenetic diseases in the next generation. So now we'll just briefly talk about rheumatoid arthritis. Now this is an autoimmune arthritis. Now this is a very severe arthritis which is associated with disfiguring, highly painful joints. It is associated with extra-articular symptoms which involve the brain, the heart, the lung, the skin. And it's been seen that the disease modifying anti-rheumatic drugs take some time to act, and these people have frequent relapses and they have comorbid depression because it's a very severe progressive arthritis, and they have reduced quality of life because these people are dependent on others. So when we did these randomized controlled trials, we found that these people, not only did they improve, initially it was believed that these people would not be able to do these practices, but initially we started these people for 2-3 weeks actually practice just relaxation practices with pranayama and meditation, and over a period of 2 months we actually saw that their disease activity score declined and there was a significant decrease in the comorbid depression. In addition to that, we found that a large number of inflammatory cytokines which were causing extra-articular symptoms, articular symptoms which cause joint disfiguration, their levels actually declined, and the levels of various factors, for example, which are anti-inflammatory cytokines, their levels actually increased. And even in those families where there were certain polymorphisms which are causing decline in the levels of this molecule, which is HLA-G. And so they had the susceptibility genotype. If after practice of yoga, there was an increase in the levels of these molecules. So there was an increase in the levels of these molecules, which are causing this to run in families. So it's important to understand that yoga can actually help you achieve immunological remission, and it helps to re-establish immunological tolerance. It decreases the levels of the inflammation, ESR declines significantly, CRP levels, the C-reactive protein levels, they decline. And in addition to that, we also find, as I told you, there are common underlying mechanisms for any complex disease like oxidative stress. They all show a decline, and again, there's an increase in the total antioxidant capacity. So why is oxidative stress declining? Again, this was the first study to show that there is a decline in the free radical levels because yoga is also improving the mitochondrial integrity. And this study shows that over a period of time, there has been an improvement in the mitochondrial membrane potential. Over an 8-week period, we find that the mitochondrial membrane potential has greatly increased. In addition to that, we also find that a large number of genes which are helping to improve the mitochondrial integrity, which are helping to maintain the mitochondrial and the nuclear DNA crosstalk, show an upregulation, increased expression, and we find that there is also mitochondrial number is increased. Now this is very, very important because it actually shows us that when there is improvement in the mitochondrial integrity, it decreases the free radical production. So that is which are targeting the DNA, the RNA, and the telomeres. So your rate of telomere shortening is decreasing. The ATP generation is increasing. So it reduces the rate of functional decline in every tissue of the body and results in healthy aging. Now I'll just briefly touch upon glaucoma. And I'll be talking of primary open-angle glaucoma, which is a complex disease. Initially, it was believed that it was just the only factor that we could target was increased intraocular pressure. But now it's known that there are various factors which precipitate this increase in intraocular pressure. There is inflammation, there is reduction in the various factors which nourish the retinal ganglion cells in the retina. There is dysregulation in the levels of nitric oxide, which is affecting the blood flow. There is the glutamate excitotoxicity, there is ischemia. But we find that when these people practice yoga, we found that there was increase in the expression of various genes which were anti-inflammatory, the genes which were protecting the neurons, their expression level increased, and the genes which were helping to allow for the drainage of the aqueous humor, which helps to maintain the intraocular pressure, actually their levels decreased. And the expression levels of genes which were causing inflammation, which were enhancing the apoptosis of the retinal ganglion cells, that is the death of the retinal ganglion cells, the genes which were causing neurodegeneration, their levels actually showed a decline. And we not only studied that in blood, but also in the trabecular meshwork. And also studies have shown, and these are also our studies, which they were initially it was shown that there was a reduced cerebral blood flow in the visual cortex in these cases. But our studies showed that post-practice of meditation, there was an increase in the brain oxygenation and upregulation of various factors like brain-derived neurotrophic factors, which not only nourish the neurons, but bring about neurophysiochemical as well as structural and anatomical changes in the brain. So now I'll touch upon glaucoma. I'll touch upon depression because India is one of the capitals which has the highest number of cases of depression. And it's important to know that depression is just not a disease of the mind. It's a mind-body disorder. And we found, again, these were randomized studies, and we find that post-practice of yoga, so there were two groups, one which did yoga in gray and the ones which were just on antidepressant drugs. And you can see that the ones that did yoga, they showed a significant decline in the levels of, they showed a significant decline in the levels of in the severity of depression. And why did this happen? You can see that a number of factors like BDNF, serotonin, DHEA, these are brain vitamins, they nourish the neurons. Their levels actually showed an increase. And serotonin, whose levels go down, and it is responsible for depression. And these are the most commonly sold drugs are the serotonin analogs. Its levels increase post-practice of yoga. And melatonin, which is one of our key molecules which determines our sleep-wake cycle, its levels increase. Now, it's also a very potent antioxidant, and its levels are found very high in mitochondria. So it actually helps you to, it actually helps you to improve the mitochondrial integrity. But what's important is that the increase in the level of these factors bring about structural changes in the brain. And studies from our group and other groups have shown that not only are there changes in the biochemical parameters, you can actually change the structure of your brain. Certain areas concerned with executive functioning, memory, like the hippocampus, the prefrontal cortex, the temporoparietal cortex, which are concerned with empathy and compassion, they show increase in gray matter. There's increase in synaptogenesis. So it increases your concentration, attention, learning, and memory. And therefore, it should be practiced by one and all, because not only people who are depressed, because this is increasing your emotional resilience, it's increasing your concentration, attention, and learning. So again, depression is also associated with high levels of inflammation. And when there are high levels of inflammation, we see that sometimes it results in poor response to antidepressants, and there are high levels of cortisol. But post practice of yoga, we find the levels of stress hormone and inflammation goes down. And again, it is associated with accelerated aging. People with high levels of stress and depression age much faster, and yoga slows down that rate. And practice of yoga actually improves all 4 domains of quality of life. So I would just like to sum up by telling you that be it any complex lifestyle disease, it has some common underlying mechanism. There's a common architecture. So, and like I told you, there is oxidative stress, there is stress, anxiety, depression, there is a dysregulated epigenome, there is damage to the nuclear and mitochondrial genome, there is immune senescence, and no modality in modern medicine can target all of that. But yoga impacts the epigenome and switches on gene programs which decrease stress, anxiety, depression by promoting neuroplasticity. They positively impact the epigenome. It switches on genes which regulate the blood flow. It helps to maintain immune homeostasis and reduces immune senescence. It decreases apoptosis. It causes parasympathetic dominance, which helps to upregulate the rest and repair genes, and which are helping to repair in repair of every organ system in the body. Because there is decrease in oxidative stress and inflammation, they help to maintain the telomere length, also because there is upregulation in the telomerase activity. I do not know how these lines are coming, and some person is scribbling on the screen. And there is also a decrease in the inflammation. So I would just like to end by telling you that yoga is an art of living, and it modulates the internal pharmacy. And yoga has tremendous transformative power. It can cause dynamic changes in gene expression, which not only helps you to promote, it not only promotes health, but it can prevent the onset of diseases. And it has not only can act as a powerful adjunct in the management of diseases, it has curative as well as rehabilitative potential, which is good both for human health and health of the planet Earth. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rima, for making such a wonderful presentation on such a complex subject on the complex disease at the same time. And first time I'm seeing so much of science and the data connected, and that too done by you. I mean, I couldn't believe that so much of work already accomplished, and you have gone to show that to what extent really yoga can help to reverse some of the problem created by ourselves. There will be many questions coming on our chat box, but I just wanted to ask you before I start taking up those questions. I think you can unshare this screen so that we can put it in a right. You have shown that yoga is really making a lot of changes in our genetic level, and how do you see this effect is only because of yoga? It cannot be any other placebo coming into play, and how do you disregard the effect of a placebo only for yoga? All the changes are happening. Any comment?
The thing is that initially it was believed that yoga is just, a physical practice, and it has a placebo. The effect is just, people say it's a placebo effect. It's known it's beneficial. So people say they are improving post-practice of yoga. But the thing is that yoga, we've seen changes which are occurring at the molecular level. And so they scientifically document the reason why there is improvement. And yoga is an experiential science. So you are actually able to know the cause by which those improvements occur. So it's not just happening that some people say, oh, it's just beneficial for the sages and the gurus. No, if anyone practices it, and they can see the changes in themselves. So it's important to know that now there are scientific studies which have validated these changes. So it's just not a placebo effect. It's a mind-body medicine which is causing profound changes. And you can see the changes that are even occurring in the brain. People initially, we believe that, we are born with a fixed set of neurons. There would be no changes in the number. But now we know that the brain is so plastic. You do meditation, and you find that there are actually neurophysical, physiological changes, there are biochemical changes, there are anatomical changes which are occurring, which is enhancing our emotional resilience, which is increasing the gray matter. So these are changes you cannot call a placebo effect, you can see them.
Okay, it's a direct scientific evidence to measure those changes, and how quick the changes, as per your observation, how soon you can see these changes happening?
Yeah, these changes are very dynamic. Actually, the epigenome changes minute to minute, second to second. So it has been seen that in experienced meditators, the changes are occurring immediately. You find increase in the level of various key neurotransmitters. But yes, when we have patients, it takes them time. And we tell them just to, focus on their breath. Just focus, or just be aware of their breath. So with them, we make them do asanas. We make them, but the main thing is which I learned during the course of these studies, because when I practice, TV bhi on hota hai, sabko, and then we are doing yoga. That's not the way. It has to be done totally with complete mindfulness. That when you practice yoga, you should be doing yoga, and it should be done just like you have food every day. You should make it a part of your daily routine. Whether you do it for 20 to 30 minutes, but do it daily. And asanas, and one day you could do asanas, but pranayama and meditation has to be done daily. That's important, That's really important.
Yes, that's a very good message and the observation from you as a doctor, that hopefully many of our actually listeners are participants of IWSP, so they're already seeing the effect and they're reporting the changes, which is very encouraging. Now I'll go to the chat box. There's a few questions which are maybe simple to you. And how yoga is different from exercise, the first question.
Okay. See, any yoga, people consider yoga to be a physical exercise, but it's important that yoga asanas just comprise about less than 2% of what yoga actually is. Though the way the media portrays is people doing asanas, and so many people leave it because they're not able to do asanas. But it's again, I would like to emphasize that yoga can be practiced by one and all. It transcends, the caste, creed, age, people with disabilities, without disabilities, with limbs, without limbs, with neuropsychiatric disorders, autism, Down syndrome. Everyone can practice yoga. So that's one important thing I would like to emphasize. The other thing, how is it different from exercise? The thing is that any physical activity would increase the level of certain key molecules which make you feel good, like endorphins, dopamine, norepinephrine. So you do have the feel-good factor. But when you do exercise, you come back exhausted. Whereas when you do yoga correctly, you come back energized. Yoga stimulates your parasympathetic nervous system. Exercise stimulates your sympathetic nervous system. Too little, too much exercise causes oxidative stress. Yoga decreases oxidative stress. So that's one of the major differences. And with exercise, you have the spirit of, competition, but in yoga, you try to improve yourself.
Yes, very well said. So I think now people will try to understand the power of yoga, no more because of ancient wisdom, but seeing it and seeing the effect of that, both personally and scientifically, they should motivate many of them now to undertake that journey. Now there is a question: how important yoga for special need people? Will yoga helps kids recover from ADHD and ASD?
The first thing is that yoga is very, very beneficial for them. I recently took a talk for children with autism spectrum disorder in one of their centers. And I would like to tell you that, first of all, yoga should be taught to them by a highly trained instructor, because these are people who have difficulty making social contact. eye contact and, social interactions, they have difficulty. So a trained instructor is actually able to, get the child's attention and develop a rapport. And the other important thing which we emphasize is to the parents is that the parents should also learn yoga, because the children will do and mirror what the parents do. They may have initial difficulties, but I think in this COVID times, it could not be a better time to practice yoga with the family and within the confines of your home. And it's very important. Children with attention deficit hyperactivity disorders, with autism, it has been seen that it increases their communicative abilities. They help to start making social contacts. It also improves their family, their quality of interactions with the parents. And so many parents after that actually contacted when they heard the talk. They were, first of all, they had some hope that, okay, the brain can change, there could be changes. And they started saying, they had left it on the center, ki wo karayenge yoga. They started doing it themselves, and they said that not only were their stress levels decreased, and so many parents said that they had developed so many health issues because of the stress of raising this child, which they said showed improvement. But there was such a profound improvement in their children with attention deficit hyperactivity disorders as well as with autism. So it really impacts them.
Thank you. Thank you. Very, very clear message. Obviously, people will already practicing. Surely they will make note that is only the kids learn, but also parents' involvement is equally important to make this impact changes.
Yes.
There's a question on specific component of yoga. We know that within yoga, we have asanas, pranayama, and meditation. Which is more important and why? Given a day I have less time, what should I practice?
That's a very relevant question. And every time we go and present papers, they say, tell us the minimum time that we can practice it. So I would like to tell that each is equally important. But what we recommend is that if like one day pranayam and meditation you have to do daily, and if you have less time, one day you do sitting down of asanas, other day you do lying down prone and lying on your stomach, those exercises, those asanas. One day you do standing and forward and the backward bending ones. But pranayam and meditation you have to do daily. But the most important thing is whatever you do it as a daily practice, and do it regularly with complete mindfulness in those practices that you're doing. In addition to that, we've seen that there is a formula 365, that you do it 3 times a day, the breathing practices, do it for 6, you try that your breathing rate comes down to 3 or 6 per minute, and you do it 5 times. So and you do it for 5 minutes. Why is that important? Because if you prescribe like that, people do it. So basically, you try to slow down your breathing rate. Breathe through the nose, and your inhalation, your exhalation should be longer than your inhalation. Do abdominal breathing. You breathe more effectively so that you can actually cause parasympathetic dominance. So you have to do all 3. But pranayam and meditation is a must with some asanas. Must. But do it daily.
Yes, I think.
But at least 20 minutes daily.
Right. Like we took a tablets 3 times a day. So like that, 20 minutes daily, but combination of all the 3 is most important.
Actually, this was told to me when I went abroad. They said you should prescribe yoga like a pill. For example, do Anlom Vilom QID, 10 QID means 10 times, 4 times a day. And I think that is what is the need of the day. That's the only way people are going to adopt it.
Yes, doctors, those prescriptions should be updated now with a new way of realizing the benefit.
Yes.
Now, would similar effect, as there is a question on autoimmune disease, would similar effect are expected for other autoimmune disease such as ulcerative colitis?
Right. Yes, ulcerative colitis is a very severe inflammatory autoimmune disease. And definitely because the underlying mechanism, be it rheumatoid or ulcerative colitis, is the same. Stress precipitates it. There is a damage to the gut microbiome. There is a chronic inflammation, chronic stress, which is actually leading to this disease. And definitely this is going to have profound impact on ulcerative colitis. There are studies which have shown a profound impact of yoga on ulcerative colitis.
Okay, thank you. And we have many more questions coming up, so you have to be a little patient to go through that. So I'm just trying to see. The next one is on the eye. How does yoga helps to improve eye health?
Okay. Though we worked on glaucoma, because open angle glaucoma is a complex disease, but what we've seen is that it is decreasing the inflammation in the eye. It's regulating the blood flow in the eye. It is helping to maintain the spaces which are helping to drain out the aqueous humor so that there's no increase in the buildup of the pressure in the eye. It's helping to regulate the blood flow. It is helping to increase the factors like the neurotrophic factors, like brain-derived neurotrophic factors, which help to nourish the neurons. It is helping to increase various other factors like neuroregulins, which are again nourishing the neurons, promoting the synaptogenesis. Now, there are certain glaucomas which are not due to increased pressure, but they are due to damage to the retinal ganglion neurons. So these factors, when they increase, are helping to maintain the structural and the integrity of these neurons, which is very vital because the retina is the light sensitive layer. So this is very, very important for eye health. And I would just like to give you a small example. I was having this issue that every day at the end of the day, I was feeling heaviness in the eye and, the dry eye. And somebody just told me that, and I was trying to learn some practices, and they told me to focus on the third eye, that if you want to open the third eye, you focus on the third eye. So I learned some techniques, and they said the best way is to first do eye yoga. So I did it, and after 3 days only, I noticed that neither I had pain in the eye, neither dryness, and neither did I feel tired. With I was feeling heaviness in the eyes, and this is the impact, and that really hit me that within 3 days, and I hardly did 3 times each up and down, sideways rotation, and this was the impact it had. So I think one must practice yoga. The improvement is immense.
Yes, for all this exercise, it's not taking a pill, but you have to practice every day as per the guidelines to get the benefit. You experience yourself by doing all this without any medicine. That's the best part of it.
Yes, absolutely.
And there's a question on the age. Can someone start at the age of 55 if they have never done yoga before?
Definitely, you can start at any age. I told you the Hatha Pradipika says that it can be practiced by all age people, very old people also. They can do, and it should be done till the level that you can do it. You don't have to go to the extremes. But I would just recommend that for the first time, do it under a trained instructor. Tell him your medical history. In case you have high blood pressure, you have disc herniation, they will tell you certain asanas you should not do. And then after you learn it, then you start doing it on your own. So that is just that you should do it initially, tell your history, get guidance, but you can definitely practice yoga, definitely.
Yeah, so obviously we are talking so many things about yoga, but there is a question of us, there's a question telling that, is there anyone should not practice yoga?
I think no, everyone should practice it.
Exactly, to their ability they should do. It's not that only one kind of thing they should do. They should do whatever without hurting themselves. They
Absolutely.
should. Yes. There is a curiosity type of questions asking, obviously the questioner is asking this. Thanks for your wonderful presentation and educating us on the subject. Now he wants to know any studies carried out with the exercise versus yoga for better health.
Yes, there are some studies, but which are comparing the effect of exercise and yoga. And there are studies, but there are very, very few. And now we have initiated studies in which we are trying to have yoga versus those doing dancing versus those going for walks so that we can actually compare. And we are trying to reduce the time of yoga to see which minimal, like there was a question, what minimum you can do. So we are also trying to see what minimal time that people can do to have the effect. Yes, there are studies which have compared both. But exercise does not have that impact what yoga has.
Yes.
Your exercise is just a physical practice. Yoga is a mind-body intervention. It's very, very important to understand that in this age of super specialization, people are having a very highly targeted approach. For example, if a person comes with female infertility, they look at the ovaries, they look at the uterus. If a person comes with male infertility, look at the testes and some other accessory sexual glands. Or if a person comes with glaucoma, they look at the eye. They don't realize that these diseases have such a strong psychosomatic component. There's such a high level of stress, anxiety. It's impacting their quality of life that they need to be treated as a whole. You cannot separate the mind and the body, tear them apart. The mind and the body occur together. Again, for depression. Depression is not a disease of the mind. It's a state of the mind which is affecting every cell of the body, every different organ systems. So you just cannot give an approach, but very mild forms of depression, you give cognitive behavioral therapy. But it's very important that we deal with the person as a whole. And yoga is a modality which targets both the mind and the body.
Yes, very clearly explained, I think. So there is a questions now coming on. Can yoga benefit in treating schizophrenia?
We haven't worked on that, but yes, there are reports that there is improvement. I have not done a detailed study on this, but recently only we decided to write a project on schizophrenia as well as Alzheimer's, which one of my students is writing. And so we are going to be working on that, but I have read that there is improvement.
Yeah, it's very encouraging to see that you have done so much of research. Just for my curiosity, are this funded by your own institute, or you got any sponsorship from any other group, industry?
No, this is not funded by the institute. It's funded by DST under the Satyam, the Science and Technology of Yoga and Meditation, by ICMR as well as by AIIMS. But it's really difficult. It's very competitive funding, and we have given many projects, and sometimes they believe that it cannot be practiced. For example, when we submitted the project for rheumatoid arthritis, it was struck down because they said they cannot practice it. So when we gave a pilot study and showed the results, we got funding. It's very difficult to get funding.
Yes, funding is always, I think I have a tough experience. Getting a funding is the first thing you have to overcome before you start your work.
Right.
There is a question I'm not very clear. It says about what about the other 5 limbs? So
other 5 that is yama niyamas. Why I talked of them is that like yama is a course of personal conduct and integrity, and niyam how you deal with others, and pratyahara is what you consume, not only food to go within, what you consume through your eyes, ears, through your senses. So why I just touched upon them is that whatever we are doing, because of these 3 imbalances, when we are not checking on these, it's resulting in so much violence with each other. We are slaughtering animals for our taste, and there is inequality, there is poverty because such an inequitable distribution. And a few months back, I delivered this talk on the minimal sustainable developmental goals by the United Nations. And, I was so shocked. I was just seeing out of the 17 goals, which they want to achieve by 2030. I was just thinking, had they adopted yoga, they could have achieved at least 12 of those 17 goals. Because yoga, just if you follow all the 8 limbs, it helps balance so many things. And they want to reverse climate change. And I think if they adopt yoga, they would really be able to do that, because they would not then they would have whole plant-based foods. So that way.
Okay, I think we'll have few more questions before we end. There's a question also asking clarification. If the cataract operation is done, can you still do eye yoga exercise?
I definitely think you can do. But don't do it immediately after your surgery. Wait for some time, and I think you ask your doctor, and then you do it.
Okay, there are a lot of appreciations, comments. I'm trying to find out, is there any specific questions? Yeah, there is some comment, because schizophrenias, in that there are a lot of people got benefited by doing yoga from S. Vasha. That's the one comment just for supporting your case that possibly if you need a lot of data, that will be a good source for funding your project, which is coming up.
Right.
Okay, I think that's all in the chat box. I'll request Dr. Sushil Sharma to have any other comments or anything to make at this stage. Dr. Sharma, please.
Dr. Dada, this was by far one of the best presentations that I've heard on CeRIMed. So let me congratulate you.
Thank you.
Also, one talk does not do justice to the breadth and depth of your knowledge. So I'll request Brutoji to invite you again to do some more exhaustive topics, especially the things that you touched upon relating to the mechanisms for lifestyle transformation, like the epigenetic disbalance and the immune senescence and dysbiosis and mitochondrial activity, telomerase length, all those things. I think they'll be very informative for us. So really congratulate you on the work that you're doing, and the I'm astounded by the breadth of your knowledge and the publications and all that good work that you've done. And one thing that I learned today is that genes is the cards that you're dealt with, but epigenetics is how you play the game. So again, lifestyle comes into it, and as our Swamiji says, you know, yad bhavat tad bhavati, as you think you become. So really, it strengthens that what you think internally is what creates your outside world, and not vice versa, as our senses and mind makes us believe. And also, based on that, I'm more and more convinced that all the environments have to be really optimized. And just imagine how it would be if you spend 2 weeks in a forest on the banks of Ganga in sunlight with the cows, and doing this beautiful selfless service to the cow by serving them and be with their natural cow dung manure grown vegetables, giving you fibers and phytochemicals unselfishly, and not looking at a cow in a selfish way, stealing the milk of the calf and putting those inflammatory agents in your body and having a poor health. So all that, be stay tuned, and Swamiji has something in the works that I'm really excited about and will be delighted to share in the days to come. But please promise us today that you will come back and give us one more lecture and stay connected. It's been a beautiful presentation and really learned a lot today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Definitely, sir, definitely.
Thank you, Dr. Sharma, for the wonderful words. Anyway, we have another 2 minutes left. Any final comment from Swamiji, please?
Yeah, as already mentioned by Dr. Sushil ji, for more than 1.5 hours we are listening. Of course, 1 hour 15 minutes from Rima Dada. It was wonderful. And as mentioned by Dr. Sushil ji, we need to listen to Rima Dada now and again, as whatever she is speaking out of her experience. The research-based work, the evidence-based medicine. So that's what all are looking at. The moment you don't have a research, the moment you don't have a proof, whatever the high yogic practices that we have, people will not have that faith. The moment we don't have faith in what we are doing, we will not get the result. That's where Swami Vivekananda says, faith, faith, faith in yourself, and faith, faith in God. That is the secret of success. To get the success, that means to get the result, that means to get health and wellness, we should develop the faith in all the yogic practices. Now let us replace the word just yoga for health and wellness by yogic practices for health and wellness. That's where we will get more clarity. By the word, when we say yoga, it has been stressed so much in the West. Of course, Swami Vivekananda, one who made the word yoga famous in the West. After listening to Swami Vivekananda, I will say, in this modern time, people started practicing yoga asana and felt that is everything. That's absolutely wrong. Yoga asana is one of the yogic practices. It is just the beginning. And as rightly mentioned by Rima Dada ji, Before one practices yogasana, pranayama, he should practice yama, niyama, moral conduct. What to do, what not to do. How should I behave with myself? How should I behave with my neighbors, with my friends, with my relatives? Ahimsa satya asteya. I should not harm my body and I should not harm others. So ahimsa is the basis of yogic practices. Then you practice asana, pranayama, and she kept on stressing pranayama in meditation. So yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, 4 steps. The 5th is pratyahara. Stay away from all the bad things and all the good things should enter. Bhadran karane vishruniyama deva. It's the prayer. Our rishis have taught how to pray. May all the good enter into me through my sense organs. Pratyahara. When you do that, dharana, you will be able to constantly focus on the good things, on God, on purity, on pure consciousness, which can give us happiness. When you can do that, you are able to meditate. Continuous flow of thought towards higher consciousness, pure consciousness, God. That's what is called as meditation, dhyana. If you can do meditation properly for 1 second, you enter the state of samadhi. You enter the state of your real nature, bliss, ananda. Electric shock, when you get shocked like that, you will get continuous shocks which will keep on producing energy within you. That's what our rishis have experienced. So this is what I wanted to say. By listening to Dr. Rima Dadaji, I was pondering over all these things. If we properly understand the science behind all the yogic practices, right from yama to samadhi, yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, samadhi, I think all must remember these 8 words. Ashtanga Yoga Sutras, 8 steps for a happy, healthy, and wealthy life. And really, we are all grateful to Dr. Rima Dada for beautiful presentation based on experience and knowledge and lucid way of presentation. So that's where our request would be. Rima Dada should come once again and again with small topics, 20 minutes topic, focusing on one thing. So you have given a wonderful presentation where you could touch all the diseases, and the back home message was, if you can practice yogasana, pranayama, and all the yogic practices, you can lead a healing life, free from inflammation. And one more important thing was, if you do only physical exercise, it may increase the oxidative stress. But yogasana, pranayama, meditation reduces the oxidative stress. We never thought physical exercise has any side effect. Today, when we compare, it has a side effect. Yogasana has only only positive effect. So that's what I would like to mention. Yogic practices. So just not understand only asana by the word yoga. By the word yoga, let us understand all the yogic practices which can make us better person by giving us health and wellness. That's my closing comment. Once again, thank you very much to Rima Dadaji and all our esteemed participants who have been actively participating, making notes, putting questions, listening, understanding. This is so nice. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Shuraji, for your encouraging words. And obviously, I'd like to thank again our speaker, Dr. Rima Dada, and all our listeners, especially our facilitator, Swamiji, Dr. Sushil Sharma, and all the other people who are asked such intriguing questions on this complex subject. So with these few words, I conclude this session today, today's talk, and look forward to see you again